Well, we're going to talk about Persia. We're going to talk to a friend of ours who's been on television and radio in the Persian and the Iranian community here in Southern California, which is, I think, is the biggest community outside of Iran. And Sion Ebrahimi is with us. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now, in the days of the 80s and the 90s when you'd come to America, you did some political commentary, reported on what was going on in Iran, and then your whole psyche, your platform changed to novels, to being creative in the area of writing stories about this, and specifically about the Jews in Iran. And this story, this book, is centered around the year of 1979, which is the key year of when the Shah is disappearing, the religious tone is changing in Iran. Iranian, mostly Jewish students were able to stay, have their visas extended, and then very soon thereafter, their parents and grandparents came from Iran to resettle. How much of the impact of the resettlement in your own personal experience did you take and put into the book, into the novel?
Well, I was taken hostage a few hours after the American embassy staff were taken hostage, and the American embassy compound happened to be facing our office. So I actually stepped down and I looked at the event. I was an eyewitness to the whole thing. Then I went upstairs and I was taken hostage by my own employees. To go back to a little bit of the background that you gave, I was the editor-in-chief of, after I came to the States, of Shofar, which is the publication of Iranian American Jewish Federation for 15 years. My TV programs were focused on, although subliminally, on political issues, as basically giving a comparison of life in Iran and in the States as to similar events happening in two different captions of time. And then I had radio programs also, which went fine for a few years. But writing is in my blood. I mean, by profession, I'm an accountant, but in blood, I'm a writer. And when I retired, I thought it was, time to write about for our next generation and for the people at large as to how we lived our life in Iran. So I started from the early 19th century and I ended up with the revolution. And I covered 5 generations. This is the story of the last generation that you have. And there are another 4 generations. This is a sequel that it won't go backwards. Hopefully, my next book will be the first generation, and then coming to here.
So, eventually the novels will end up here in America?
That's right. That's right. It starts with the book that I'm hoping to call it Rubin the Rhino, because Rubin was the name of my great-great-grandfather, who happened to be the chief of our ghetto in Isfahan in Iran. And his story was that in a year of famine, he was coming to the ghetto and he saw a Muslim guy, because Muslims and Jews, there were some Muslims living among us in our ghetto. They were basically killing a young Jewish kid. And my father goes to the Muslim guy and says, and we lived in an okay situation together, but this fellow was very upset about this kid having killed a dog and eaten the dog. And my great-great-grandfather says, "Nope, this doesn't happen with us." And actually, my dad was relating the story to me. He was saying it could have been because it was famine. People were hungry, but we don't know. And trying to save the Jewish kid, this guy who had attacked him stabs him, my great-grandfather, in the shoulder, and he throws him against the wall, and he hits the wall and blows his brain, and he runs away, and you can't guess where he ends up. He ends up in the chief mullah of Isfahan's house because he took him wine and he was friendly with him, and he takes asylum there.
Now, I have a question for you about Jewish Iranian history, because those of us who are not from Iran, it seems mystical, mystique, different, a whole different society that somewhat's close to us. The Persian community stays very close amongst themselves, but I'm sure there's different stories within the community or different ways to walk the Jewish life. But I know you mentioned I'm not going to pronounce this right, the Mashhadi
yeah.
Jews from an area, from a city of that name, that also walk to a different beat. Who are these people?
We had small Jewish communities in different cities in Iran. One of the biggest communities was the city I come from, Isfahan. But in Mashhad, which is a super religious city because Imam Reza is buried there, and it's a shrine that Muslims go to pray, somehow there was a Jewish community there too. And about, I guess, 150 years ago, Muslim mullah orders killing the Jews. I convert them. If they don't convert, kill them. So it's a long story, but to cut a long story short, they eventually decide that, okay, we'll become Muslims, but we'll keep our faith. So the group of people who are called, to this day they are called Muhammads and Alis of this world, although now they have changed their names. But they went underground. They built their synagogues underground, and they married between themselves. They bought meat from Muslim butcheries, but they butchered their own again in their houses or underground. They lived a very tough life. Some of them, although keeping their faith, they found their way into the system of governance in Iran. And the protagonist in my book, Layla, is a descendant of Mashhadi Jews. I have specially taken her as an example, that her grandfather is a general who's a deputy minister of defense or war at the time with the Shah's father. And but her mother marries, her father marries a Jewish person because they really wanted to get back their identity. So, that's the contemporary history. But I don't know if you're interested in the ancient.
I've read the works of Habib Levy, for example, Carmel Levy's father, who delved into the ancient history of the Jewish people in Iran. But I think the interesting thing for American Jews and for those watching us across America now is the Jews from Iran today. What's happening to them? I see this is a sequel, and a book or two ahead of this is what I'd like to talk about as well. But I do want to encourage people. We're going to put a website, information on people can get your book, Veiled Romance. But it seems like slowly but surely the Iranian Jewish community is becoming more visible to the non-Persian Jews in America. In other words, and the Jewish non-Persian Jews are interested in the history because it seems mystical, different. We don't know that much about our Persian friends who live in Beverly Hills or in Westchester. Mm-hmm. It seems like they've stayed amongst themselves, but it's changing now, I think, isn't it? Isn't it changing?
Oh, we very much have become a part of a broader community. A group of our youth have established an organization called 30 Year After, which basically means 30 years ago, you guys were the leaders of our community, you were our community, now we are the new generation. And they're doing a fantastic job. I mean, they are inside the mainstream of American Jewry. You have to bear in mind that the language barrier probably has kept us mostly away from, you know, the mainstream Judaism in America. But more and more we have become interested. If you go, say, to Sinai Temple, the majority of the attendees are Jewish. They like it. They like the American way of interpreting Judaism, regardless of, you know, from Orthodoxy to Reform. They find their home there. Because in Iran, we're Jews. When we first came here, people asked us, you know, what's your religion? Jewish. I mean, American Jews asked us, and what sort of a Jew? A Jew. What do you mean? I mean, you know, we're Jewish people. And then we realized that, oh, you guys have, you know, separated into 3 different segments of belief, which is good. I mean, everybody could find their own home. If you're an Orthodox, you would become an Orthodox Jew. If you're, you know.
But in reality, I think you'll agree. I'm going to kind of step in here for a minute.
Go ahead.
I believe that every Jew, this is what makes our community of the Jewish people around the world so unique, is different from the other. That there's not really, because we're so independent thinking, that we may have commonalities, you and I, yeah, but in reality we're all individuals, and we create our Judaism based on the different laws of the Talmud or what's the story in the Torah, but we pride ourselves, we build our persona on being ourselves.
True. Very true. I quite agree with you, and it's not only that. I mean, you know, to go back a little bit on that, as Iranian Jews, we have a heritage that has been recorded time and again in our religious books. The story of Esther, who is a Persian queen, the stories of Haskell, who was an advisor to a Persian king, and all of these individuals who were Iranian Jews, who before Islam, they had major roles in the Jewish life of Persians. And then we have also Cyrus the Great, who saved us from Babylon and gave us as Jews the choice, either go to Israel and rebuild our temple or come and be his citizens in Persia, Iran. I'm one of the descendants of those guys who decided to go to Iran and become his citizen. So, you know, we have a very, very unique background until about 1,500 years ago, when Islam took over, and they took over everything. I mean, all Iranians had to convert, and those of us who, and they obviously have converted a lot of Jews, but still we stayed. We stayed, we remain, and we exist.
I have a question that's an assumption, but I know our viewers are going to want me to ask you, what do you think will happen in Iran in the future, politically and religiously?
I was watching 60 Minutes this week, and the ex-Mossad chief was saying that, you know, you're dealing with clever people. And this I agree with. We have about 30,000 Jews in Iran now. We have a Iranian Jewish representative in the parliament. We all know superficial, but we still have them there. We have been begging them to come out, and they don't. They say, no, you know, we have a life here. We are okay, which we feel as, I sit on the board of the Iranian American Jewish Federation also. And I don't think it's a right decision they have made for their lives. We had the same thing in Europe before Hitler. I mean, during Hitler also. And they opted to stay. As to where this existing situation is going, it's hard to tell. I mean, the fact that these people have built their nuclear hideouts under highly populated cities like Isfahan, where I come from, and there are a few million people live there. Or in the mountains, that's a different thing. And then it's scattered all over the place. They're shrewd. They are dangerously shrewd. And, you know, I know a lot of people hate me saying this, but it's very true. You're not dealing with people who blow themselves up for no reason. They have atomic scientists who are shrewd. they are intelligent. So it's a very, very complicated situation that beats me. It really very hard.
It beats the leaders of the world.
Leaders of the world, very true.
It's a complicated situation. Yeah. Nobody knows the end.
No, it's very hard. It's easy to say invade it, you know, uproot it, have it over with. I don't think it's practical. I don't know.
Well, no one would have guessed back in 1979 when the Shah and everything was falling, that the whole world would be focusing on Iran so many years later. That's for sure.
That was 100% sure, actually. At the time I was on vacation when the revolution was going on in Europe. And I came back home, and in Europe, a cousin of mine lived in Spain. We were staying with her. And she kept on saying, something is going on in Iran. I said, come on, Shah is in power. America is behind it. It's okay. And I get to the airport, and my late father-in-law welcomes us and says, don't worry, Shah changed the prime minister, everything will be okay. Well, everything wasn't okay. A few months later, there were 3 million people on the streets. They were. You could see it from, you know, the helicopters up. It's so easy to stimulate a nation who hasn't been politically and socially prepared for situations like this. And we see similar things now in Egypt. We see it in Syria. We see it all over the place. I mean...
unfortunately, it's all over the place around Israel.
This is
the sad commentary, but that's the way it is.
And it worries me. It worries me seriously about the Israeli situation in this mess.
Well, one thing I've known through many of my friends from Iran is their Zionistic love for the way they love Israel. There's no question about it. There's a connection. And then during the Shah days, there was a lot of back and forth, vacationing, communication, kids going to school in Israel, coming back home for the summer. There was, it's certainly a different world today.
And not only that, I mean, it was such an attraction for the Muslim elite. We had a lot of Muslims who even studied in Israel. Forget about the medical situation there, the ability to cure people who had incurable quote-unquote disease according to the Iranian physicians, with all due respect to all of them. But they went to Israel and they came back happy. You know, you have cancer, you will die. They went to Israel, came back healthy. They had a lot of respect for Israel. There were Israelis all over the place, improving the agriculture, the engineering, you name it, they were there. And we had incredibly good relations with the state of Israel. Now, as we, I mean all the Iranians. Now, when the things turned around and Israel became the evil as Khomeini portrayed it, then the situation changed. Yet, I mean, as far as the Jewish community is concerned, as far as our member of parliament has to go behind the mic there and say, you know, Zionists down with them, we are Jews, we are not Zionists. That's a separate thing. They have to do that. But deep down, they listen to the Persian program of Radio Israel every day. That's broadcast to Iran. They follow the news of their motherland, and they are Jews.
Strange world, but like you said before, we have to learn from the past, from the dark days of World War II. And but I think what's interesting, so many dynamics about the Jewish community from Iran here in America, and how they've succeeded in helping a lot of Jewish causes that are not specifically Iranian Jewish causes. First of all, I want to encourage our viewers to read Veiled Romance. And Simon, it's a great read. So
thank you.
We have some information now on how you can get this book. And I want to thank you for being with us and giving us a feeling of the community today in America, and as well those 30-some thousand Jews still living in Iran. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me here. And we are part and parcel of the bigger community, and I hope we'll develop to be much more assimilated.
I must say, too, there are several of our friends who are contributors and supporters of JLTV that make our network possible. So we want to thank you and them for doing that. We'll be back more on JLTV Across America after this.